In this video, we're going to look back at the WNBA over the last 3 days. That includes Indiana playing with their food. Do any of the bottom teams want to make the playoffs? Atlanta, Chicago, and Dallas, as it doesn't appear so, as they all let golden opportunities slip. Do I apologize to the Washington Mystics? I think not, and I will explain. I don't know what they are doing. All right, before we start, if you enjoy the content, then please consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. Your comments, your poison, it's always welcome. All right, let's get into this. So first, in tonight's game, the Fever got the victory over the LA Sparks. My overall take was the Fever were not too sharp. They were turning over the ball too much and just sort of, you could just see it. It just was not quite their night, but they were able to do enough to get the job done just because they've got more talent. One of the problem areas was turnovers. I think they had 18 turnovers, 7 of which were by Caitlin Clark, but she made up for scoring. So she went for 24 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. Yes, the magical triple-double. Oh, we all celebrate the triple-double. If it would have been 24, 8, and 10, it would be not celebrated. But if you get the magic triple-double, then my God, it has to be celebrated, and you can win an MVP that way. I am looking at you, Russell Westbrook. More importantly, Clark was an efficient scorer, so she went 8 for 17 from the floor for 47% and 4 for 10 from the three-point line. It turns out that Kelsey Mitchell is human, as she only went for 18 points. Yes, only for 18 points. And she was 8 for 18 for 44% from the floor, and she only went 2 for 7 for 28% from three-point range. Aaliyah Boston had a really good game. It seemed like she could get whatever she wanted inside. She went for 24 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal. She was efficient, going 10 for 16 for 62% from the floor, and she only had 1 turnover. Their next 4 games should be pretty interesting. They've got the Lynx, the Dream, and then the Aces twice. Those games are all at home. Alana Smith's availability will be a big impact on the Lynx game. As well, Fag Benlay, she is managing a shoulder injury. It's not defined how serious it is. The reports I've seen say she should come back fairly soon, but you never know. As I want to see how she matches up versus the Lynx, I want to see her on Alana Smith, if Smith indeed plays as well. I want to see her on the Aces and how they deploy her, and if she gives A'ja Wilson any trouble. I imagine they'll just give A'ja Wilson a whole bunch of different looks, which will include Boston being physical on her and then trying to use Fag Benlay's length on her to see if that gives her any issues. I think some of the most feedback I got on my last video was regarding the Las Vegas Aces and me saying the Fever have a chance to catch them. It's fair comment back to me. A lot of people think that the Aces are not catchable and that they are a serious title contender, which I believe as well. I just don't know how much they've rope-a-doped and tried to save their legs, and are they going to go to a different level? That is a good possibility. I just see that weakness at the 4, as their vision was to have Candace Parker playing that 4 position, which would have been perfect. As well, Derica Hamby would not have been a bad fit at the 4 for them. That would have been quite nice. I'm sure if they could go back in the time machine and redo their relations and keep Hamby, that would have happened. The interesting thing with the Aces is that last year they were middle of the pack in terms of other teams' three-point percentage against them, but this year that has gone down. They are number 11. So in 23, they limited teams to shooting 34% from 3. And this year, teams are shooting 36%, which is 11th in the league. Now, interestingly, to me at least, the Fever are just ahead of them in opponents' three-point percentage, as they are holding opponents to 35%. They are rated number 10 in the league. And then both of these teams can shoot from three-point range, and they're close in this in shooting percentage as well. So the Fever are shooting 34%, which rates them number 3 in the league. And the Aces also shoot 34%. They're rated just behind the Fever at number 4, as they're like .346 versus the Aces that are .349. Again, probably way too nerdy. I just want to see this matchup and just see how they go, as the Fever are clearly a different team, and I just want to see how it goes when they deploy Fag Benlay, hopefully against A'ja Wilson, and if they stymie the Aces, or if the Aces are just pacing themselves and are in the part of the season where they are going to turn it up and really start to show what they can do. That's the question. Now, looking at some of the other games that have taken place, I think what we've learned a little bit is why Seattle was number 5 and Phoenix number 7. You see that quality of difference between those two teams versus Chicago, Atlanta, and Dallas. And the reason I say that is they got the must wins they needed to get. So Seattle, they needed a win over the Sun. It was going to be a hard win to get, but they got one of the two. They played against them. They just played strong the whole game. And every time the Sun made a run at them, they countered it and just steadied the ship. In much the same way with Phoenix. Phoenix knew they needed that win over Atlanta. Atlanta was desperate for the win as well, but it just seemed to me that Phoenix was just the more mentally tough team. If Ryan Howard goes off in that game, how she went off versus Phoenix, so she went for 31 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, and she was efficient. So she was, pretty efficient, going 11 of 24, shooting 45%, and then from 3, she went 6 for 15. If she plays that sort of game, Atlanta has to get the win, and that was one of the wins they really needed to get. It is good at this time of year because the coaches are more revealing in the press conferences. It was interesting listening to the different coaches. And you could just hear it in Tanisha Wright's voice. She was really ruining that loss, and you could tell she was frustrated. She held it in and said, yeah, we need to focus on the next game, which is Dallas, but that was a bad loss for them. Now, Atlanta remains in a tie with Chicago as Chicago went down to Las Vegas, which was expected. Even more so as they were on the road and Kennedy Carter did not play, and that's what it comes down to. When will Kennedy Carter be back? If she is back in the next game, well, they are playing the Sparks, and that could be a victory. And then they are back on track to make the playoffs. So I just think Atlanta and Dallas missed a golden opportunity to really punish Chicago for all of these losses that they have had since the Olympic break as well. If you look at the strength schedule, Chicago now has the easiest schedule coming home with the number 12 strength of schedule. Atlanta is at 6, and Dallas has the 3rd hardest schedule remaining. In regards to Dallas, that was a bad loss to Washington at home. I would almost write them off, but again, nobody wants to take that last spot and grab a hold of it, as Chicago can't win right now, and then Atlanta didn't take advantage either. The concern for Dallas is that Satu Sabally left the game in the second quarter. She did come back in the second half, but she fell, and it was her shoulder again. So she actually fell on her right side, but she sort of braced her fall with her left arm, and then you could see on the next play she was able to challenge a shot, and then when she came back down court, she was sort of holding her arm and saying, don't pass me the ball. But then she looked okay in the second half, so it didn't seem like it was an ongoing issue. But when they asked Trammell about it, she's like, yeah, it's the shoulder. She's not fully healthy. So after that scare, I wonder if fans are going to shut her down for the rest of the season. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just always skeptical of shoulders because they can pop out again. She's had her surgery, and I wonder if they're going to go conservative on her or not. Now, this was a good victory by Washington. Like, they played well. They're a gritty, tough team, and I guess some would be expecting me to apologize to Washington because I disrespected them in the last video, and I really didn't include them for the playoff race. But I'm not going to apologize to Washington. I'm going to ask Washington, what are you doing? You're supposed to be tanking. If I was a Washington fan, this victory would drive me absolutely crazy, and here is why. If you look at the Tank Wars, they are currently sitting number 2, and it goes on based on your 2-year record. So it looks very unlikely that they will lose enough games to surpass Los Angeles. Los Angeles is 24-49, and Washington's 2-year record is 29-44. So congratulations to LA. They will have the best odds at getting Paige Bueckers at 44.2%. Washington is currently locked in at 27.6%, but the other thing is Washington owns Atlanta's pick, which is at 17.8%, as Atlanta has the 3rd worst cumulative record over the last 2 years. And then Dallas is number 4. So losing to Dallas and Chicago that would be actually good for Washington. And teams say they don't tank, and maybe Mike Tebow is above that, or the GM Mike Tebow won't let his son tank. I don't know. But man, your big picture makes no point wanting to grab that last spot to make the playoffs just to get crushed. No, you're in this to get Paige Bueckers. If you have Bueckers and Aaliyah Edwards, the rebuild is totally on, much like the Indiana Fever. So if I was a Washington fan, I would have been hoping that my team lost to Dallas, and then Dallas goes on their way to Atlanta and beats Atlanta again and really certifies themselves as the 8th playoff seed. And by all means, crush me in the comments. What would you do? If you're a Washington fan, are you happy about the victory to Dallas? Or are you sort of like, oh man, in my heart of hearts, man, they needed to lose that game and really set us up. As if Atlanta finishes third worst, then your odds would go up to 45.4% in terms of your chances of getting Paige Bueckers, which would totally set your organization up for the next 10 years. I know what I would do, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm a bad guy and a loser because all I want to do is get ping pong balls and set my organization up long term. I think what the Indiana Fever did was smart. And that's what I would want the Washington Mystics to do if I was one of their fans. But I'll leave it over to you. All your feedback and poison is welcome. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great night.